I'm back. Trust me. Back, back, back. It's normal. It's normal. As promised, guys, we are back with the first ever mixed martial arts news and updates podcast for the very first time on this channel. And in case you're wondering what the hell, man, he kept his promise. Hey, that's what we do in here. So, as I told all the listeners last week, that if we had hit 250 subscribers, we would be doing a MMA podcast every Wednesday night US time and Thursday morning Eastern. Pretty much that's what we're doing here. And without any further ado, let me put you guys up to date with what's happening with the mixed martial arts world. Let me quickly change the thumbnail before I do that. This is called the MMA Vegan Experience. So, since I'm a vegan, sort of like Nate Diaz is, that's why I use that thumbnail to denote the fact that this is going to be called the MMA Vegan Podcast. If you have any suggestions for changing the name, of course, we'll be glad to do the same. Put that up in the comment section down below. So in case this is your first time, this is Harry here from MMA Live, the same channel which brings you unbiased play-by-play and fight analysis for all UFC and mixed martial arts cards. Coming up is, though, UFC 209. The extended preview has launched. I'm going to go first with the UFC's official website, UFC.com. Whoever is joining into the stream, I agree, Michael Fernandez, but he just tried to be vegan once in a while. So, I've heard him. He does eat eggs. He does eat fish once in a while, and I do eat eggs also. So I'm not really a full vegan, so kind of cheating in there. But I thought it was a good name, so kind of went with it. Couldn't come up with anything fancier. I thought about straight edge, but again, I'm not really that straight edge anymore, so hey, just going with the flow in here. So, quickly, guys, a lot of good news popping up. Probably the biggest one breaking recently is George St. Pierre is coming back. My internet is a little wonky and my laptop is fucked up, so I'm gonna let you guys, decide to follow up a little slowly. Okay, so this is the breaking news right now. George St. Pierre and UFC agreed to a new multi-fight deal. I do not know what kind of source is this, but this is breaking in lowkickmma.com, and apparently they're very, very close to signing a multi-fight deal with the UFC. That shows that GSP is willing to compromise a little bit with his requests in terms of money and the Reebok branding, etc. So probably that's gonna be the case. Yeah, probably the weed, exactly. Michael Fernandez, thank you for joining in. Zahabi brings unique experience to UFC debut. Let's check that out. But if you remember, GSP does train with Firhaz Zahabi's TriStar Gym. So apparently one of the best coaches on planet Earth. Also, Joe Duffy is training at this particular gym recently, and Firhaz has gone on record saying that he's apparently very close to reaching his full potential. But man, GSP coming back, that's gonna be a lot of shit, man. A lot of good fights available for GSP. At the top of my mind, I would have to say GSP versus Michael Bisping comes to mind as one of the top options available. And also, Sugar Rashad Evans is apparently cleared for UFC 209 in Las Vegas, and he's going to be fighting Dan Kelly at UFC 209. If you remember, guys, last time when Rashad Evans was scheduled to fight Tim Kennedy, he had failed a pre-fight medical test in terms of his head scan or MRI or something like that. So apparently he's got cleared of all of that medical issues, and now he's apparently set to fight in UFC. Breaking in from the Herald Sun, the same news is breaking in from Sony ESPN, one of my favorite TV channels, and the same channel I watch to break down UFC fights. Yes, that is correct. Probably a little too worn out by now. Michael Fernandez, where are you from? Do let me know the region where you joining in from so that I can customize the stream according to the preferences of the audience. Okay, what else do we got? GSP comeback. This is probably one of the most ridiculous ones which I heard in some time. So apparently subscribers in UK and Ireland were suddenly restricted to live coverage of preliminary bouts alone, which made Fight Pass far less tantalizing a tool than it originally was. So apparently UFC is pushing in Fight Pass to even coaches in the MMA world. Apparently a couple of coaches got an email from the UFC saying that you need to subscribe to UFC Fight Pass to improve your coaching. That is just ridiculous. If the UFC has actually gone on record to push UFC Fight Pass to a lot of these guys. California. All right, Michael Fernandez, thank you for joining in. So that is the top news which is breaking in. Once again, let's have a look. Apparently Ariel Helwani is the one breaking the situation with GSP and his multi-fight deal. Obviously it's going to be a phenomenal return if UFC does finalize the deal, but I did hear Dana White a couple of days back saying that apparently he's not really sure about GSP ever coming back. So it's a back and forth. Do not know who's exactly where in terms of positioning, but hey, you never know. If he's back, I'd probably say he's going to be fighting Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight title. What else is there? The last fight was in UFC 167 back in 2013. So it's almost been 4 years for GSP to make his comeback. So that is going to be really interesting to see who he goes up against. What else is coming up? This is a good one. Conor McGregor credits certain part of his anatomy for his confidence and skill. Guess which part he must be crediting it for? I am sure it's all in the nuts. It's all in the balls. That's what he says. I just have confidence that comes from my big balls. And I know when I smack you, you're going down. He told GQ, and that's it. Don't know what's in future for Conor though, man. They're saying this Conor McGregor is going to probably fight Floyd Mayweather finally. But hey, that's a real speculation at this point. Riverside, California, but bro, your vids are dope. Keep up. I'll be here listening. You should have more people watching you right now. That is correct. I agree, but hey, no problem. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. Samba Kid's in the house. Oh, it's a little too late for the Canadian blanket. All right, I'll probably reschedule this next time. Samba Kid, long-time listener. So now Trump banning all illegals from the U.S. and how are most of these fighters gonna fight? That is correct, man. That is absolutely on point. You never know what Trump will ban next. Probably he's gonna ban weed also. And California, some of the dopest place to get weed, I've heard from my friends. So I don't know what else Trump will do. Joe Rogan Experience recently had a fight recap, which Mr. Joe Rogan is doing. This is the screen which it looks like. If you guys really want to listen to, something obviously done by a far more experienced professional, you should go check out Joe's video on the fight recap for UFC 208. And with fight recap comes to mind the awesomeness which was UFC 208. I have to say, man, what a night of fights was UFC 208. Let us see what else UFC.com has up its sleeve. So GSP comeback, nothing new. Conor McGregor talks about his balls, nothing new. What else is new? I'm vegan, that's also partially nothing new. Apparently, Feb 19th is the day you need to tune in to a lot of great mixed martial arts fights, because we have Travis Browne going up against the Black Beast Derick Lewis. I will be breaking down those fights the coming week. That is going to be Saturday night and Sunday morning in Asia. So that's going to be a real dope night of fights. Plus, probably the biggest fight to happen is going to be this one. Let's just pull it out for you guys in a little bit. It's going to be the return of Fedor Emelianenko to Bellator to fight Matt Mitrione, the meathead. That's going to be really interesting to see what Fedor happens to accomplish in that fight. Apparently, he wants to end his career with Bellator, so that's going to be really interesting. So when you Google search Fedor, it's pretty apparent that, he's past his prime. So let's have a look at the Bellator 172 card. Closer look at that. Unfortunately, Bellator does not get coverage in my country at all, and they do not stream online that much. So if I get a chance, I might break this down too. But it's a toss-up between Travis Browne, Black Beast, and Fedor and Mitrione. I'm leaning towards Fedor, but it's really difficult to get the specifics of Bellator to be streaming into my country. So that's pretty difficult. Okay, so the fight card is pretty good, I should say. It apparently has Josh Koscheck also. So here is the fight card for UFC's main card, which will be coming up after this. But I'm first going to be letting you know about Bellator 172, Fedor Emelianenko versus Matt Mitrione is the main event. Josh Thompson is going to be fighting Patricky Freer for the co-main event. That's actually not a bad card. Czech Congo is on that card. Czech Congo is going up against Ollie Thompson. Vita Ortega versus Brooke Mayo is going to be the second fight of the night. And the first fight of the night is going to be Josh Koscheck versus Mauricio Alonso. That is going to be the fight card for Bellator 172. The prelims, though, do not excite a lot of mixed martial arts fans. Apparently, most of these fighters are up-and-comers. I am not aware of most of them, but still I'm going to update you guys with this. Anatoly Tokov versus Francisco Franz. That's going to be the fight opener. Justin Tenidora versus Roque Reyes. JJ Okanovic versus Paradise Vavanosa. Most of these guys are not going to be eliciting any attention. So probably the fights to look out for is the main event, Fedor versus Matt Mitrione. Josh Thompson's fight is really promising. Czech Congo's on the card, and so is Josh Koscheck. So that's actually not a bad fight card for Bellator 172. Apparently, Fedor also wants to finish his career with Bellator, so that is really interesting. to see. And we got some polls in here which ask us to vote on who GSP should be fighting next. The options are Michael Bisping, Nick Diaz, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, and Conor McGregor. You guys let me know in the comment section, who do you think GSP should be fighting next? Apparently Anderson Silva is also not retiring, just as I broke it down last week in UFC 208's stream. The interview was a little emotional, but apparently Silva is not retiring. Silva is really going to be having a couple of more fights before he actually retires. So no retirement for Anderson Silva, but should he be facing GSP is the question. I do not think so. So I'm going to vote my choice as Michael Bisping. Let us see what the poll tells us. 25% agree with me. Okay. Koscheck is still fighting. Agreed, man. Koscheck is still fighting. Still fighting, man. Whew, that's been such a long career for Josh Koscheck. So, Anderson Silva's not retiring anymore. Let us see what else is happening in the world of mixed martial arts. Rashad Evans has got the license, guys, against Dan Kelly to fight in UFC 209, but I'm really disappointed. Let's talk a little bit about UFC 209 here. Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz are not featured on that card, which is really disappointing, to say the least. Samba Kid, what do you think about Nick and Nate not getting featured for this one? That is really a doozy in my opinion, because apparently they couldn't get the fight done with Nate Diaz. He was demanding 30 million or something like that. So that was really kind of disappointing to hear from Nate Diaz's part. But even if he would have got a fight arranged, there were very few fighters who Nate could have fought. So I would probably say, who else is there for Nate to fight? Maybe RDA to avenge the loss which he had against him. But again, RDA is a pretty tough fight to sell to Nate Diaz. So that's going to be pretty bad on Nate Diaz's part if he lowers his market value. So he's holding on for probably Conor McGregor next. But Conor is going to be fighting at 155. I don't think whether Nate can make 155 anymore. That's really the bigger question here. So I don't know whether that could be possible for Nate Diaz. But anyways, that's what is happening with UFC 209. One more fight card added, and the extended preview for UFC 209 has hit YouTube, so you guys do go and check that out. UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship channel on YouTube, that is running the extended preview for UFC 209 Wonderboy versus Tyron Woodley 2. The possible opponents for GSP ranked on the order of probability are as follows: Michael Bisping, Anderson Silva, maybe Conor McGregor, Tyron Woodley. These are the top 4 possible fights for GSP, and if they are close to cracking a deal, who knows, man? Maybe they could do UFC 209. That's a little too nearby. So they could do a Diaz versus GSP at middleweight. Nick Diaz versus GSP. They could also do Nate Diaz versus GSP at 170. That's going to be a really interesting fight too. So a lot of possibilities for these guys at 170 and 185. Okay. What else is happening this week? Yes, UFC Fight Night 19 UFC Fight Night 105, Derrick Lewis versus Travis Browne. That card is gonna be awesome. So let me quickly let you know what are the cards happening in the coming weeks. UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis versus Travis Browne. Let's look at the schedule. That's gonna be 6 p.m. Eastern on February 19th, which is going to be a Sunday. So I may not be able to break down that fight actually. Yeah, guys. Actually, I'm traveling on the 20th, so I may not be able to break down this fight. So might as well have a look at this. Maybe if it's a little early, I might try to do this. What is 6 p.m. Eastern in my country? Gonna be over in 1.5 hours. That's the best possible chance for me to break down these fights. So hopefully that's soon and we get a lot of knockouts. That's what I'm hoping at. What else is there? Karate Mitchell Watterson apparently has signed a deal with WMING. Hopefully she does not go the route of Ronda Rousey and starts focusing on all the acting. So I'm probably not gonna be supporting that, but man, she's a doozy. She is pretty good looking woman. So she can probably pull it off in the acting sphere. But she's also a mom. She has to manage her career, being a mom.
Probably only had Burger King maybe 2 or 3 times my whole life, but I couldn't pass this up. It's appetizing. The Squid Ink burger, or something like that, releasing today, only in Japan. I don't always eat fast food, but when I do, I eat the rare, exquisite ink burgers from Japan.
As Paul Heyman can call him. Apparently he has made up his mind that he is not gonna be fighting in the UFC anymore.
I'm gonna sit next to this tomato to feel healthier about myself. Ooh, look at this.
He returned to fight in UFC 200.
Here's the bun. Here's some black stuff.
Lesnar is 39. Positive.
Wow, that's unique.
Blocker called clomiphene.
Here we go.
Similar to the
Squid
one
burger.
found in John Jones's test with the USADA. UFC 200. Apparently he feels that he is
Tastes like
getting taken care by
a school lunch. It's tasty. It doesn't taste like squid. Sounds like it would taste.
Soon, if you remember it.
Well, guys, you saw it firsthand. It's me, your favorite, eating one of these squid burgers. I may or may not finish this thing right now. You'll never know. And back to the healthy lifestyle for that. Sayonara.
His last fight before UFC 200 was against Alistair Overeem. He just kicked his body multiple times and he went down like a pack of cards. So that is a wrap for his career soon.
बाहर निकलते ही मेरी स्किन को सामना करना पड़ता है धूप से होने वाले एक नहीं 5 डलनेस प्रॉब्लम्स का सारे 5 डलनेस प्रॉब्लम्स का एक सलूशन नया पॉन्ड्स मैन एनर्जी चार्ज आईसी जेल फेस वॉश कॉफी बीन आईसी स्क्रब के साथ धूप में होने वाले 5 डलनेस प्रॉब्लम्स का मुकाबला करें दे ब्राइट और एनर्जाइज स्किन
GSP, that is probably
नया
the
पॉन्ड्स
biggest
मैन
breaking
आईसी
news
फेस
which
चार्ज
is happening in the mixed martial arts world. His top contenders or fights available to him probably is GSP. Could be Conor McGregor if Conor wants to come back and take a piece of that action. He could also fight Tyron Woodley for the 170-pound title.
Not my problem.
That could be interesting.
It didn't matter who I was
or he
facing
could
that night. It could have
also
been like
fight
some guy off the street.
Nick or Nate Diaz, one of the Diaz brothers. Should be an interesting fight, and maybe the rumored super fight, which has never happened till now, Anderson Silva versus GSP. GSP would probably maul him just like Daniel Cormier did. But should be really interesting. Any of these fights could happen, and if you guys feel that, you know, one of these fights is what you would want to see,
in training, I've been feeling great.
Comment section. Let us
I know I'm 37, but I started this career late, and you know I didn't start fighting until I was 26. So I still think I've got some good years left in me. I just needed to get the result tonight, and I think that will give me my mojo back.
Okay, so Alex Garcia also wants to fight Colby Covington. After a botched fight booking, Alex Garcia, if you remember, defeated Mike Pyle. Oh my goodness, who are these four ladies? The best in the business, that's what they are. So UFC welterweight Alex Garcia was supposed to fight Colby Covington this past June at UFC Fight Night 89. 10 days before the event, he told MMA Junkie Radio that he injured himself. So apparently he wants to have a go at Colby Covington once again, when Colby Covington apparently implied that Garcia had run afoul of the USADA. USADA saved him an ass beating. That is what apparently Covington had implied. So apparently Alex Garcia is not really impressed, and he wants to have a go at it. And another news breaking in is Floyd Mayweather apparently wants to really do the fight with Conor McGregor and set the record straight, but apparently he says nothing is in place. If you remember, the Irish Sun had broken the news that Conor McGregor and his straight-bassed gym teammates, one of them had apparently broken the news saying that they had already had a deal done with Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather for a boxing match, but Floyd Mayweather clarifies that nothing of that sort has happened till now. So that is gonna be another postponement of the apparent Mayweather versus McGregor fight. UFC 208's main event, Jermaine Durandamy and Holly Holm. A lot of people scored the fight for Holly Holm. I scored it for Durandamy though, in spite of the eye poke and the punches after the bell. That is what I scored it for, but apparently she is willing to give Holly Holm a chance at the title once again. She says that she does not fear anyone.
Again, and welcome to another edition of the Speed
Bag. Holly
today,
again,
a little segment I like to
Cyborg is gonna take some time.
That is not
to get
how you do this. So Jermaine Durandamy is your UFC Women's Featherweight Champion.
Cutting.
Made history at UFC 208 on Saturday night when she beat Holly Holm via decision in a very close fight. Now, there were bound to be some people who disagree with the judges in a fight like that, but hey, that happens. No big. There were also, of course, bound to be people who thought that Durandamy should have been punished for punches after the horn to end the round. At least one of it's really clearly hurt Holm. But, you know, hey, this is MMA. We never follow our own rules that consistently anyway, so maybe we ought to be used to that. Where she really appeared to lose the support of the masses was that as soon as the name of Chris Cyborg Justino was brought up during her post-fight interview, that's when Durandamy remembered that she needs hand surgery for a hand that she injured 2 years ago. To the skeptical mind, kind of made it sound like Durandamy just wants no part of Cyborg, who, you know, in fairness, is legitimately terrified. So we haven't heard too much about any hand injury before, but then we hear about it from Durandamy as soon as Cyborg's name gets brought up as a potential next opponent. It's kind of like your friend asks you to help him move, and you're like, oh, no, I can't. I got this injury from my college basketball days. And he's like, dude, you won't stop talking about the stuffed bear you won at the county fair 3 years ago. If you played college basketball, I think I...
wrap almost. The last news which we have for a new signing is David Branch signing with the UFC again. He has been a WSOF World Series of Fighting light heavyweight and middleweight champion. He has signed back with the UFC. He says, here's the thing, it was just a load of things that went on that night, and like right now it's just really complicated. But he is going to be signing, so that's an interesting prospect for the middleweight division. I'm going to close this with a announcement for the fights and my predictions for UFC Fight Night 105, Lewis versus Browne. The undercard goes on Fox Sports 1, and the first fight is a really interesting one. Thiago Marreta Santos going up against Jack Marshman. I'm gonna pick Thiago Santos for this fight just because of his lower absorption rate and better takedown defense. I'm gonna probably go with a decision for Thiago Marreta Santos. Then Ayman Zahabi, apparently a UFC newcomer, maybe not linked to Farhaz Zahabi, is going a bit against Reginaldo Vieira. I'm going to be picking Vieira for this one, even though his opponent is a undefeated fighter. It's going to be happening at 135 pounds, and I'm going to pick this for a submission late in round 2 or 3. That is my pick for the second fight. Then we have a really interesting one, actually. The return of Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza, former UFC 115-pound strawweight champion. That's going to be a really interesting fight. That is going to be against Ronda Marcos, one of the better looking females in the strawweight division, but looks do not matter anymore. Neither did they matter before this, because this is going to be a short night, I feel, for Ronda Marcos. Carla Esparza's wrestling should take over against the Iraqi. So US versus Iraq. In that fight, I'm going to pick Esparza by a decision. And then we have Nordine Taleb versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Santiago, though, one of my favorite fighters in the 170-pound division. And I'm going to pick Santiago Ponzinibbio, the gentle boa, for the victory by decision again is my pick, or probably a TKO for stoppage in round 2 or 3. That is the prelims prediction. The only fight on UFC Fight Pass early prelims is Ryan James versus Jared Maserst. I'm going to be going with the more experienced fighter from United States. Gerald is my pick via a TKO or KO late in round 2 or 3. That is going to be my pick for this one. And the main card is actually a really promising one, probably better than UFC 208, guys. UFC 208, one of the worst fight cards ever put by UFC. So let us see what are the first fight. Paul Felder against Alessandro Ricci is the first fight, and the Irish Dragon should be able to get the victory by spinning shit, most probably, or TKO. So I'm gonna pick Paul Felder by TKO in rounds 2 or 1. That is my pick for the first fight in the main card. Then we have Sarah McMahon getting back into the octagon after quite a break against Gina Mazzani. I remember correctly that Sarah McMahon's last fight was with the current 135-pound champion, Amanda Nunes, and she got defeated by TKO by Amanda Nunes. So Sarah McMahon should be able to get a unanimous decision in this one using her wrestling and ground and pound. Then a fight between one of the best looking fighters in UFC history, Elias Theodorou, the Spartan, going up against Cesar Ferreira. This is actually a really close fight. in the 185-pound division. But if you have to go with power and total landing per minute, I have to say probably Elias Theodorou would scrape through with a decision on this one. So that's going to be the third fight of the evening. Then we have Sam Sicilia versus Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker is probably making his UFC debut. His nickname is the Newfoundland Terror. He is undefeated, and I am still going to be picking Sam Sicilia for this one. The more experienced fighter should be able to get it, but if Gavin Tucker surprises Sam Sicilia, that should not be out of the question, guys. So Gavin Tucker could spring a surprise. I'm kind of split down the middle once I see the stats in favor of Gavin Tucker. So I'm probably going to change my pick for this one. I'm going to go with Gavin Tucker for the upset. Who knows, man? He might spell the upset. Then probably the two fights which you should be tuning into for sure is Johny Hendricks versus Hector Lombard. That should be a really, really interesting fight. Showweather is a killer, but he got killed in his last fight at UFC 199 by Dan Henderson, who went ahead and faced Michael Bisping and lost his retirement fight. But Hector Lombard is no joke, guys. He's got a solid wrestling base and good hands. Johny Hendricks, similar in style, good wrestling and good overall hands. I'm going to be picking Johny Hendricks for this one via a decision. A close split decision is my pick for this fight between Johny Hendricks and Hector Lombard. Do remember this fight is happening at 185 pounds. Then we have the main event, which everybody's looking forward to. Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast, going up against Hapa, Travis Browne. Travis Browne has looked out of sorts in his previous fights. He has been on a losing streak for quite some time. Can he reverse his losing streak? It is a doubtful question. I'm going to be going with the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, to probably get the decision victory in this one. I do not expect a KO though, because Travis Browne has got a solid chin and good takedown defense. So this should be a stand-up affair, and I do not see the Black Beast knocking Hapa down. But I still feel he has enough in his arsenal to probably get the victory by unanimous decision. As promised, guys, this is the episode 1 of the MMA Vegan Experience from the channel MMA Live. As I had promised, once we hit 250 subscribers, I would be doing a new podcast every Thursday, breaking down all the latest and greatest mixed martial arts news to hit you in the entire week leading up to Wednesday night or Thursday morning, depending on the region you live in. So the top news and roundup once again. It's going to be a short podcast this time. I'll be giving you guys much more content next week. But since this is the first episode, I'm going to be focusing only on fights and the latest news to break. The biggest news breaking in today has been GSP apparently very close to signing his deal with UFC for a multi-fight contract. So apparently they're really close, and GSP might return to the octagon after a gap of almost 4 years. His top opponents, in my opinion, are Michael Bisping for the middleweight title, Nick Diaz for 185 at probably UFC 211 or 212. You could also run Anderson Silva versus GSP. And if Tyron Woodley successfully defends his 209 fight against Wonderboy Thompson, then that should also be a really interesting fight between Tyron Woodley and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But I am picking GSP versus Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight title in GSP's return fight. It is really close to get finalized. Then we had last week's doozy sleeper of a fight, Germaine de Randamie versus Holly Holm. The whole fight card sucked balls all night long. It was not entertaining, but I did manage to reach the highest concurrent views in my video, 1,600 people tuning in concurrently to that stream. Really appreciate all of those guys who tuned into that one. The main event had a lot of controversy with Holly Holm apparently being picked by a lot of fans. I did pick Germaine de Randamie. I felt that the illegal strikes could have got a point deducted, but in spite of that, I felt Germaine de Randamie defended most of the takedowns of Holly. Holly did not have any pressure going into the stand-up game, and she was unsuccessful in most of her attempts to take Germaine down. So in my opinion, Germaine was the deserved victor. A lot of guys disagreed with that, but hey, that's how it works. The fight of the night was Dustin Poirier versus Jim Miller. What a fight that was. Great fight between those two. A lot of the other fights ended up in decision. Anderson Silva also picking up a controversial victory against Derick Brunson. I did not feel that was controversial. Also, if you want, you can check out my podcast with the live play-by-play and fight analysis for UFC 208, which has received more than 33,000 views by now. Anderson Silva, I really felt during the fight, did enough to secure the victory. He was having the majority of the octagon control. He landed the harder shots for sure. He had Derick Brunson in trouble once or twice, and he defended 90% of all the takedowns by Derick Brunson. One of the takedowns which Derick landed was due to a inadvertent trip while Silva was going for a flying knee, so I don't count that as a takedown. And second was when he eventually pressured Silva in the middle, caught his leg and took him down. But in my books, it was a clear victory for Anderson Silva, 2-1, and he is not retiring from the UFC. As I had told in the podcast, looking at how emotional he was, my prediction got wrong there. Silva is apparently still going to be fighting in the UFC. That is going to be the update from UFC 208. Coming week, we have February 19th, Travis Browne, Hapa versus the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, Johny Hendricks versus Hector Lombard. Do not forget to tune in. I would be breaking down those fights the coming week, but that's going to be Monday here, so I would try to do my best and hope that those fights end soon, because I got to go to work on Monday. So hopefully those fights end well. Other events happening around the world. Conor McGregor gives an interview saying that his confidence comes from his ball sack. That is what he says in an interview to an MMA outlet recently. That is what he credits all of his confidence to. Floyd Mayweather says that they have not finalized any deals for their fight with Conor McGregor. Apparently, the Irish Sun had broken some news saying that the deal is already done, and apparently only a third party, which I mean the UFC, is giving a little bit of trouble to the contract. Apparently, Floyd Mayweather heard of this and clarified quickly, saying that nothing is finalized at the moment for Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather's boxing match. That is probably going to be a wrap, ladies and gentlemen, for the first ever MMA experience with the vegan, the MMA Vegan Experience, episode 1. Our Dreamer, hello. Thank you for joining into the stream. We're going to be continuing to do this starting this week. As I had promised, once we hit 250 subs, I would be doing this particular podcast. We have smashed that number. We are close to 400 subscribers right now. Almost double the targets. I was going in at 180, 90, but due to UFC 208 and the response received from the MMA audience, overwhelming to say the least. A lot of people came in with a lot of kind words in that podcast. So we are close to 400 subscribers, which is a big deal for me, man. Been doing this, every fucking week almost, whenever a UFC fight happens. Though, guys, do not be surprised if I am unable to cover the UFC Fight Night 105 the coming week, because it's going to be Monday morning here for that fight. It's going to be really, really odd timings for me. So hopefully I'll try to do whatever I can to the best of my abilities, but do not be disappointed if I cannot cover that event. Also, do check out, probably the most important news I want to give you guys is, please do support Bellator 172, which is going to be happening between Fedor Emelianenko, the last emperor, returns for the very first time to Bellator against Matt Mitrione, the meathead. That is the main event. Josh Koscheck is on that card. Josh Thompson is on that card. So is Czech Congo. That is a beautiful night of fights for Bellator 172. Bellator fighting is growing at a really fast pace. Scott Coker is at the helm, and he's apparently doing a really, really good job. So Bellator 172, GSP returns, Connor's interview, Mayweather's interview, David Branch signing to the UFC. Those are the top news coming out of the MMA world this week. Germaine de Randamie did clarify, saying that her her punches after the fight got over were not intentional, and she is also willing to give Holly a rematch. Chris Cyborg is probably going to get a TUE, therapeutic use exemption, for her diuretic, which she used for cutting weight in her last fight against Lena Landsberg. So that is going to be a rematch possibility. Sorry, not a rematch possibility. Yeah, rematch possibility between Germaine de Randamie and Holly Holm, or Chris Cyborg could be fighting for the title against Germaine de Randamie. That is going to be a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining in to the very first MMA Vegan Experience podcast. Appreciate all the support as usual, and we're going to call it a wrap. Thank you all. I will see you guys for UFC Fight Night 105. Till then, peace.